Maddison and Sterling are starting to look like irresistible FPL assets. Meanwhile, the likes of Gabriel and Martinelli are really starting to frustrate us FPL owners. So we need to talk about those that we need to prioritise and those that we desperately need to sell. And we're going to cover that off in this video. So make sure you do drop a like and of course, smash that subscribe button. We're aiming for 9k before the game week 4 deadline. I know you legends could do that. So without further ado, let's get into today's video. So first up, I want to cover off 8 things that I think you may have missed from Game Week 3, as I think these are really relevant for Game Week 4 and beyond. So first up, Saka took the penalty for Arsenal. Last week we were talking about how Odegaard stepped up, took the penalty, and he is now the Arsenal penalty taker. Well, Saka has thrown his name back in the ring as he took that important penalty against Fulham. And I think he's the penalty taker, but we don't actually know right now. So what I'm reading from this is Saka is still the best Arsenal asset. I still believe that. And the fact that he took a penalty in Game Week 3 and scored it is positive, but don't be surprised if Odegaard maybe takes one in the future. So it's a little bit unclear, but it's good that Saka took the penalty. Number 2, surprisingly, Matty Cash was best for expected goals, which was non-penalty at 1.23. Second best was Jared Bowen at 1.22. Again, these are without non-penalties included. Really, really interesting reading for somebody like Matty Cash. I think he was a little bit of a rotation risk in our minds, but 3 starts in a row for Aston Villa and being a real attacking influence in this team at right back, he needs to be on our watch list, and we will talk about him later on in this video. Number 3, Sterling, the highest point scorer. We all know that he is the talking point right now in FPL, whether he is actually once again an FPL option. I wrote him off completely going into this season, but with 19 points, a really impressive performance. Yes, I know it was against Luton. Again, another player that needs to be on our radar. Point number 4, Gabriel bench and unused. Something is going on there regarding Arteta and him. It has to be. Arteta is finding a way to bench Gabriel in any possible way. If you own him, you sell him regardless. Yes, you could ride out a couple of price changes, but look, this guy is just a liability in your team. Get him gone. Number 5, another penalty topper. Fernandes took the penalty for Man United. We've been waiting for this moment to get a bit of an understanding whether Rashford or Fernandes is going to be the Man United penalty taker. I think we all thought it was going to be Bruno, but this is for me kind of confirmed it and made Bruno Fernandes at 8.5 million probably the go-to Man United option right now if I was to buy one. But let me know your thoughts in the comments on that one. Number 6, one of my favourite forwards in the league from an underrated perspective, Nottingham Forest, and I always mispronounce this, Awoni scored for the 3rd game in a row. And this is a player that's played against Arsenal away and Man United away. Last season, he literally was involved in pretty much all of Nottingham Forest's goals. He is the main man in that team. And when the fixtures do turn for Nottingham Forest, he is going to be a massive differential that we all need to consider for our teams. Because if Forest want to stay up again this year, they are so reliant on him for goals. And I think this guy is one more season away from a big money move to one of the top teams. I think he's that good. Keep an eye on him. Number 7, João Pedro benched. We all thought with the injury to Enciso that João Pedro was going to step in at number 10. But no, De Zerbi ended up playing Ferguson and Welbeck in that starting 11, which was very, very surprising to a lot of us. If you own João Pedro, unfortunately, I think it probably is a sell because those minutes are so hard to predict, especially with Europa League around the corner. And last up, Gabriel Jesus back in the squad and coming on for the last few minutes in their game against Fulham. This isn't good news for certain players. I think Enquiries owners probably have to sell now. Martinelli owners, does this mean Trossard maybe is going to come and get game time off the left? Regardless, it makes Gabriel Jesus a potential forward option later down the line, which is only a good thing for FPL as it opens up the options that managers can go off into. So those are your 8 things that you missed from Game Week 3. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Okay, so we of course need to talk about this Maddison Sterling debate off the back of their Game Week 3 performances. As I mentioned, Sterling being the highest point scorer of 19 with 2 goals and an assist, and Maddison also stepping up with that goal in Game Week 3, coming off a little bit early, but we know that he was going into this game week as a slight injury risk, so I wouldn't read too much into that at all, especially if you are looking to buy him. That is not a problem at all. He got through the game fine. Now, 7.6 million for Maddison, 7.1 million for Sterling. This is why we are all tempted to be bringing them into our FPL teams, because the unbelievable value that they can offer. This is why FPL is ridiculous this season, because we're getting players like this at such dirt cheap prices. Now, I want to look at the touch heat map for both of these players, and this is going to take into account from game week 1 up until game week 3. So this is a combined touch heat map. So first and foremost, Maddison, what we need to talk about firstly is he is the set piece taker in this Spurs team. You can see that with the heat map in both corners, which for me is just an added element to any FPL option. He just has another avenue to points, being the assister for some set piece goals, which is a massive bonus. Now again, in this Maddison touch heat map, we're not seeing him necessarily get too many penalty touch areas, but that's what we come to expect with him. He is one of those that is going to dictate the creativity in that middle third of the opposition area, and I do not think that's a bad thing at all, because when we compare that to Sterling's, being either a right-sided forward or right of a front three in this Pochettino system, he is naturally going to get a lot more penalty touch areas, being that driving force in the team, especially on that right-hand side, basically where he got all that goal involvement against Luton, which you can see there, but also operating in that mid-third of the opponent's area, as we expect in that system that they're playing. Now, looking at the numbers for the opening 3 game weeks, in terms of goals, Sterling leads the way, and these are all based on per 90 minutes. Expected goals, they are even at 0.38, and then it is all about James Maddison. Shots on target, shots on the box, all incredibly impressive for somebody who is playing as a number 10 as opposed to someone like Sterling, who's playing as a second forward in a lot of these games. Importantly as well, the expected assists, something that we are very, very accustomed to seeing James Maddison performing in, looking good at 0.37 per 90 compared to Sterling's 0.24. And the attempted assists as well is really showing where Maddison has been such a creative force in this Spurs team. Whereas I'll say Sterling's turning more into maybe the goal scorer of this Chelsea team, especially if they are going to continue with him and Nicholas Jackson up front together as a front two. Now, I want to put the fixtures up for both Spurs and Chelsea over the next 6 fixtures. I think that's probably a horizon that we're looking for if we are to invest in these players. Now, based on the fixtures alone, I am going to slightly lean towards Spurs having the better games. Now, I know they have Arsenal and Liverpool over this period, but some of the fixtures alongside that are incredible. Sheffield United at home, Luton away, Fulham at home, even Burnley away in the following game week. I thought Burnley might be a bit more tougher competition, but they actually haven't put up that kind of defensive display that I was expecting from a Vincent Kompany team. Now, Chelsea, on the other hand, that game week 4 fixture is so tantalisingly tempting for us FPL managers to target. But after that, they have Bournemouth, a tough Villa game, Fulham away, which won't be easy, Burnley, which I've said is probably going to be easier than we first expected, and then Arsenal. Now, based on those fixtures over that horizon, I would lean more towards the Spurs fixtures for attacking potential. And looking at the underlying numbers, the touch heat map, if I was to buy one right now, I would target James Maddison. I think he just ticks all the boxes to be a phenomenal FPL option. He is going to play every minute barring injury. He is the creative force in this Spurs team on set pieces, and Spurs actually do look like a team that is starting to tick into motion, especially from an attacking potential. And I think you always want the guy that is going to be on the field every single minute and the heart of that team. And James Maddison ticks that box. Now, that doesn't mean Raheem Sterling's not a bad pick at all. I think he is a great pick. But a lot of people already have a Nicholas Jackson in their teams. Maybe it isn't the route to go for with a double Chelsea attack. Maybe it's worth having Nicholas Jackson as your forward and James Maddison as your midfielder. Maybe sacrifice the investment in Raheem Sterling for now. If he does continue the form that he is showing, then he might become a temptation. But for me, Maddison would be the preference of the two. Let me know your thoughts in the comments on these two assets. Now, of course, in order to buy a Maddison or a Sterling, we have to sell a midfielder in our teams. And going into game week 4, I think we always targeted this game week as the time to move away from either a Man United or an Arsenal asset, because of course they do play against one another in this weekend set of fixtures. Now, a lot of FPL managers have even gone double United, double Arsenal, or even gone all in on double, which is somebody like me. I am a manager that has got Rashford, Fernandes, Martinelli, and Bukayo Saka. And going into game week 4, with these other midfielders sticking their head up like a Sterling, like a Maddison, it feels like the right time to move away from one of these midfielders. But we need to discuss, is it Man United or Arsenal that we do need to move away from? Now, firstly, I've got up the underlying stats for all of the assets that we are going to be discussing about based on per 90 minutes for the opening 3 game weeks. And I've got it ordered by expected goals naturally, because that's all we want to know about, isn't it? So, Bruno Fernandes leads the way for expected goals at 0.67, but we do need to remember that penalties are included in this. But of course, Saka's taking a penalty, Odegaard's taking a penalty. The only two that haven't are Rashford and Martinelli. So keep that in mind when we are looking at these underlying numbers here. But Bruno Fernandes is leading the way for expected FPL points as well at 9.05. And his expected assists as well is fantastic at 0.82. And looking at the general numbers already, it looks like Bruno Fernandes is the man to own from a general FPL perspective, being an attacking option and also a creative force in that team. When we compare that to Rashford, we can see that the XG is less at 0.5, but again, he isn't on penalty responsibility, and his expected assist is less at 0.16, naturally meaning that his expected FPL is going to be much further down than that of Bruno Fernandes. So if we were looking at just Man United in general, I think Bruno Fernandes being 0.5 million cheaper would actually be the number one pick of the United pair. So if you were looking to sell one, I probably would lean towards selling Rashford more, even though I do think over the long term, he is going to be that goal scorer in this team. But until we see Højlund actually integrated into the side and Rashford moved out to the left full time, I feel more confident knowing what I'm going to get from Bruno Fernandes as an option. Now, looking at the Arsenal assets, we can see here that Saka is leading the way for XG per 90 at 0.61. But once again, we need to remember a penalty has been involved in that. But he's putting up good expected assists per 90 as well at 0.31. The one that's really, really disappointed me is going to be Martinelli, probably because I'm an owner alongside a lot of you out there. 0.24 XG per 90 is not bad at all, but it isn't the numbers that we come to see from someone like a Martinelli. He's usually hovering around the 0.4 XG per 90. And the expected assists as well at 0.05 per 90. Now, one could argue that maybe the integration of Enquiries is actually a negative for someone like Martinelli, because we need to remember, Gabriel Jesus has returned for Arsenal. We have seen in the past that Jesus and Martinelli work really well together, with Jesus dropping into almost like the half spaces and Martinelli being the furthest man forward running in behind the defence. So I would expect these numbers actually to improve once Gabriel Jesus does return into the Arsenal team, which we are expecting to be from game week 4 onwards. However, as I've seen in the point here, which players are minutes risk going forward, I am going to say Martinelli out of this bunch. Bruno Fernandes is just locked into every minute, and I think Rashford is the same sort of caliber player. Saka, we've seen historically, just doesn't get rotated from Arteta. I think he is that golden boy in this Arsenal team. And Odegaard, I think, again, being the captain of the side, he is just going to play way more minutes than that of Martinelli. So if I had to say one was going to be a minutes risk, I think Martinelli of the 5 is definitely falling in that category. Now, if we're looking at general fixtures for both Man United and Arsenal, I'll put them up on the screens here. I'd probably argue that long-term, Man United probably just edge it, and that is because of the home fixture that they do have. Brighton, I actually don't personally rate defensively, so even though Man United might lose that game, I'm not worried to play attacking assets in that particular fixture. As we previously discussed, I don't think Burnley are as resolute as we thought they were going to be, so that's not as daunting as I first thought. And then Palace and Brentford at home, tough cookies, but I don't think it's a bad fixture. And then Sheffield United away in game week 9. When we contrast that to Arsenal's fixtures, let's rule out game week 4 because they do play against one another. Everton away, a fantastic fixture. Spurs at home, always a tricky game, a North London derby. Bournemouth away, followed by City and Chelsea. I think that is a bit more of a tougher fixture run than that of Man United, even though they are probably quite close. Because of that, because Man United are better fixtures, and I've discussed about Bruno and Rashford being more guaranteed picks, I would not rush to sell your Man United assets right now. I would actually be so much more tempted to sell Arsenal, and Martinelli, if you own him, is absolutely going to be the one that I would choose to sell to make way for a Maddison or a Sterling. Now, if you're in a position where you don't have Martinelli, maybe you're sat there with double Man United and Saka, the next one that I would sell would be Marcus Rashford. He would be my top pick to sell in that Man United midfield, just because we don't know what we're getting with him, where we're playing as a 9 or off the left. Bruno, we know exactly what we are getting. So to conclude, if you have Bruno, Saka, Rashford and Martinelli, I would sell Martinelli first and foremost. If you have the double Man United and one Arsenal, then I would look to sell Rashford as your pick to make way for a Maddison or a Sterling. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. Right, let's move away from these popular midfielders and talk about some differentials that I think are flying under the radar. Well, at least in my eyes, at least. So I've got 4 players here, slightly different price ranges, but I think are all considerations for FPL teams. And that is going to be Spurs' Sarr. What a baller that guy is, by the way. Aston Villa's Diaby. I know we've all talked about Diaby, but I just want to kind of review how he's getting on so far. And then we've got the West Ham pair. James Ward-Prowse, of course, being an option, and Jarrod Bowen, the man that we wrote off at the start of the season, coming back to haunt us. So I've got the underlying numbers here based on per 90 minutes. And what is super surprising right now is that Sarr at Spurs is leading the way for expected goals at 0.64. Look at his expected assists as well at 0.3. This guy is operating as an 8 in this Spurs team, with basically Bissouma playing as the 6 on his own, Sarr being a box-to-box midfielder, and Maddison being the real creative force in that 3. And Sarr is stepping up with these numbers. We can see his shots per 90 at 4.2 are ridiculous numbers. And we can also see as well his attempted assists at 1.8. This is a guy that's doing everything, being a bit of a goal scorer, being a creator. Now, this is only 3 games we need to remember, so I'm not going to jump to conclusions and say here that he is going to be this going forward, because it's only 150 minutes. But Postecoglou has got these boys ticking right now. I think they all know their responsibilities in the team. With the upcoming fixtures for Spurs that you can see here, Burnley away, Sheffield United at home, I still think it's an unbelievable time if you want to move towards maybe a midfield 4 and you want a 4.5 midfielder to be on your first sub. This is the guy to own right now. Sarr is absolutely the one, and playing like a 6 million midfielder as we speak. Now, talking about 6 million midfielders, 6.6 million for Diaby is honestly looking like the steal of the century right now. We knew this guy was a baller. We knew he was unbelievable coming into this league, but he's delivering the goods in the numbers in the Premier League right now. 0.32 XG per 90, 0.68 expected assists. Now, what I love about Diaby is the fact that he is playing as a second forward alongside Watkins. What they're doing so well is that one's going long and one's dropping into the half spaces, and the centre-backs are really struggling to pick up their movements. And what Aston Villa are looking is powerful. They got Bailey operating off the right. They still have Jacob Ramsey to come off, who will operate on the left. They have powerful runners in this Aston Villa team. And with the injury to Buendia, they've lost that kind of little creativity in the half spaces that Diaby is now operating in. And he's looking like an absolute threat. Now, I'm not going to necessarily say for you to sell in Mbuemo and Mitoma or an Eze to bring in Diaby necessarily, because the fixtures are a little bit mixed going forward for Aston Villa. Liverpool in game week 4, Palace, Chelsea, Brighton. I think Aston Villa could score against any team. I think they are that good. But is it the right entry point to bring him in? I'm probably going to say no. But Diaby needs to be on our radars, because once we get to even game week 5 potentially, he needs to be a transfer consideration for our teams, because his numbers are fantastic. Now, moving into the West Ham boys, it is so good to see Ward-Prowse as a potential FPL option. He's played 171 minutes. His XG is 0.62 and expected assists at 0.2. Now, it's really early days to get an understanding whether James Ward-Prowse is going to be an attacking option in this West Ham team. But while they play Alvarez and Souček alongside him in a midfield 3, with Paqueta and Bowen supporting Antonio, he is going to be the man that is going to break forward and get into the box. And we saw that against Brighton. So I'm in a position right now where James Ward-Prowse is absolutely a wait and see, but we know that he's Premier League quality, and we know that he can score goals, especially from set pieces. He will score a free kick. He will get assists from set pieces. That is guaranteed. But if he does add this part of his to his game where he's actually going to be a guy breaking into the box, which we didn't really see from Southampton because he had to be there to dictate play alongside Lavia, with Alvarez, with Souček being the defensive force, I think we could see an unbelievable option in James Ward-Prowse. But because he's only played 171 minutes, and the signing of Kudos coming into the West Ham team that might impact James Ward-Prowse's attacking potential, I want to wait and see on Ward-Prowse. But you need to put him on your watch list, because if he is that player, he needs to be on our radar. But the one that we know is guaranteed going to be playing the way that he does every single season is going to be Jarrod Bowen. An XG of 0.56. What a goal by Brighton, by the way, against Brighton. An unbelievable finish. An expected assist of 0.25. Now, the only problem, he is 7 million. So we're starting to look at that kind of Raheem Sterling, James Maddison price range. And I still would have both of those above Jarrod Bowen. However, look at that fixture in game week 4 away against Luton. That could be the entry point if you want to go into the West Ham assets. But look what follows. Man City, then Liverpool. For me, West Ham are actually surprising me. They're looking good. But because of the fixtures, even though game week 4 is great, it really would be only a 1 week punt, because the fixtures after that are a little bit dirty until we get into game week 7. So for me, Give it 3 fixtures, see how Kudos enters his West Ham team, see if Ward-Prowse continues to be an attacking threat, and then once we get to game week 7, that might be the entry point for these West Ham assets. But again, just to conclude, Sarr at 4.5 million is the man to own if you need to free up a 5th midfielder in your team, and Diaby is only a matter of time until he gets into our teams. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. So last up, we need to talk about these budget defenders in the game, because they really were the stars of the show in game week 3. We had Matty Cash delivering a brace. We had Gusto with a pair of assists, and Udogie as well with that 12-point horse. What I've done here is I've kind of done a bit of a top 3 ranking on these 3 assets, because it's worth noting the likes of Botman did get injured, but I do think he is a good option at 4.5, but he doesn't offer that attacking potential. And Rico Henry as well at Brentford is a fantastic option as well. But I want to bring in the equation the players that I think offer both clean sheet potential and attacking potential, because those are the ones that we do get really excited by in FPL. So first and foremost, maybe surprising to you, I have put Matty Cash at number 3 at 4.5 million. Yes, he does have amazing attacking stats. They are ridiculous. It's some of the best XG numbers that I've seen from a defender, especially in these opening 3 games. And he was the highest scoring defender in game week 3. There's no denying that Matty Cash does offer that high ceiling that we're always looking for from an FPL defender. However, the fixtures are a little bit tricky, and once again, when we're always looking at defenders, we need to first and foremost know that the bread and butter is going to be the clean sheets, because once they lose the clean sheet, it's a lot harder for them to get into the bonus, and then we really are relying on those attacking returns. Liverpool away in game week 4, from a clean sheet perspective, I don't really like. Then they have Palace, then Chelsea, then Brighton, then Wolves away, for example. I don't fancy their chances too much for regular clean sheets over this period. And my one question also is, does Matty Cash definitely start in the fixtures that are deemed tougher away from home, which is the Liverpools and the Chelseas? The reason I say that is because Digne is also a fantastic option in this Aston Villa team. Now, I know they played a back 3 in game week 3, so it's very difficult to get an understanding of what Unai Emery's fancied formation is. But if they were to revert back to a back 4, I don't think he's going to play both Digne and Matty Cash in this system. Might be wrong, let me know, Aston Villa fans. So we could see situations where Digne plays left back and Konsa plays right back, or we could also see Matty Cash play right back and we could see Pau Torres play at left back, just to give that bit of stability. So the uncertainty of his minutes is the probably reason why I'm putting him at number 3. I just don't know if he is going to play in them tricky away games where they are going to be a bit more under the cosh than before. Now at number 2, I have put Malo Gusto. Great long-term fixtures for Chelsea going forward. They are brilliant, especially in game week 4 at home against Nottingham Forest. Looks like a great entry point. He's the cheapest asset, so if you are a Gabriel owner right now and you're looking to free up some funds, he is a great option at 4.1 million. And he's also playing right wing back. I think very surprising to see Pochettino play this 3-5-2 formation. I don't know whether it's going to stick, but while it is, as a right back, he is obviously going to have more attacking influence in that Chelsea system. The negatives, he is going to be a rotation risk once James is back. Now, we don't know when James is back, and I would argue Malo Gusto's put a good enough performance in to not rush James back into the team. He does have the worst attacking stats of all the 3 as well. And a Chelsea defence double up, I don't know is the route you want to go for. I think a lot of you probably have Ben Chilwell right now. Do you want to have Chilwell and Gusto with the likes of Nicholas Jackson and Sterling offering themselves FPL value? If you go down that route, you are going to block yourself off of maybe going for a double up in their attack. So probably a little bit to avoid if you want to go down that option. But Gusto, a great option at 4.1 million. He is looking like a steal. But number 1 is going to go to Udogie at 4.6 million. I don't know if it's Udogie or Udogie. I do apologise. Now, for me, I think he's got guaranteed game time. He's putting in 2 good performances, and Ange Postecoglou wants his fullbacks to get forward and make those underlapping runs, and Udogie offers that in this team. So right now, I think his game time is pretty secure. Great underlying attacking stats as well, it's worth noting. And the fixtures long-term are good for Spurs. Now, 6 and 7 is a little bit dirty away against Arsenal and Liverpool. But either side of that, they have Burnley and Sheffield United. And then game week 8, they have Luton followed by Fulham. So I know you could probably maybe bench him in game week 6 and 7 because he isn't too expensive that you don't have to play him week in, week out. So if you're a Gabriel owner, if you're looking to sell, I think this is the way I'd rank them right now. Gusto could go number 1, but I'm just a little bit worried about James's horizon when he does return from the injury. But let me know your thoughts in the comments I'm a Udoji owner. He's coming as an auto sub in my team, and I'm delighted. Yes, guys, okay, so that's going to wrap up today's video. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully this has covered off a lot of those hot topics that you had on your mind going into Game Week 4. Of course, I will be dropping my Game Week 4 transfer plans in the next video, so make sure you are subscribed to the channel. As I mentioned, we're trying to get to 9K subscribers. If you can help us along that way, I'll be massively appreciated. And of course, if you enjoyed the content, make sure you do drop a like on the video, and I will see you in the next one. Take care, guys. Cheers.